So, hi everyone. I am back. And so we're going to continue class, and I'm going to start off by continuing reading in the book The Great Red Dragon, and I'm going to continue reading that, okay? And then we'll have our last segment, which I will talk to you about sexuality and identity, gender identity, okay? So I'm going to finish off where I was. So I'm going to finish off chapter 10, okay? When any deviation of structure or constitution is common to the parent, it is also transmitted in augmented degree to the offspring. Hence, we may feel sure of the theory of descent with modification. There is the conclusion of science that explains that separation of the sexes. The condition of degeneration produced an abnormal, unbalanced condition of the body. The dual qualities of creation did not develop evenly and harmoniously. The positive male qualities of the organism continued to develop, but the receptive female qualities withered and atrophied. The sex hormone excreted by the positive glands promoted the development of these glandular qualities, but the sex hormone excreted by the receptive glands was deficient, as the glands were deficient and the receptive female qualities wasted and withered. Because of their not being furnished with sufficient nourishment, the unbalanced sexual deficiency continued the atrophy of the receptive qualities until there finally came a time when the receptive qualities appeared as latent, dormant, rudimentary traces of the perfect condition which once had been. This transformation, says Wingham Wood, and modern science, was accomplished only by slow stages throughout long eons of time. Very true, but the law of this marvelous and mysterious transformation, which so completely confuses modern science, is clearly revealed by and in the sexual changes suffered by lower organisms when they are subjected to unfavorable conditions. Okay? Under the law of de-evolution, the male appears long ages after the female. In this finding of science is revealed the truth of the ancient legends and traditions of the Virgin Mother. The male appears after woman had been on earth for many ages, and he appears as the product of degenerative influences. But it commits the error of making man superior to his virgin mother under the drive called evolution, which is always upward into new, more complex and higher forms. Research workers in the field of health agree that humanity is in a degenerate state. Dr. Alexis Carrel says that present humanity is degenerating, and adds that the groups and the nations in which industrial civilization has attained its highest development are precisely those which are becoming weaker. Diseased and degenerate creatures are not progressing upward into new, more complex and higher forms. They are de-evoluting, going down like diseased fruit trees. The race is generally diseased. It has been so for thousands of years. Hence, it has been de-evoluting for thousands of years. Under the law of de-evolution, the weakening formative females were slowly but surely transformed into semi-sterile males. These males still possess unto this day the indelible evidence of their descent under the law of modification from their remote virgin mothers, as Darwin, Maudsley, and other leading scientists have shown. This is the first logical and consistent explanation offered in modern times of the unsolved mystery of the reason why Mother Nature ever took a husband. This explanation is supported by the findings of science, and it is in harmony with the established facts of nature and the known laws of the universe. It is ignored by science because it disagrees with the theory of evolution. So notice that they mentioned that woman degenerated, or degeneration is caused by what was the word they used? It was caused by unfavorable influences. So when the mother is subjected to unfavorable influences, so basically they're talking about her environment. So once the environment starts to change and the environment is not conducive to her creating a fully developed child, she will create a child that is underdeveloped or is missing some of their genetic makeup. So that's where the result came in, where man came into play. Okay, so it really has a lot to do with the environment and her consciousness. Okay, so chapter 12 is called Man, a Degenerate Woman. Okay, since modern thought has increasingly encouraged our doubts in the objectivity of knowledge, it would not be amiss to approach with great caution every problem of living existence. The one-sided view expressed by modern science as the development of humanity leads to such a vast amount of confusion that a new theory offered on the subject, if considered without prejudice, may make it necessary to rewrite the history of humanity. So they're talking about how Darwin came about with the theory of evolution. So man evolved from an ape being, right? So basically that would mean that, again, man came before woman, if that's the case. So it says science states that the female is the primary and the original sex, and that the first son of the virgin mother was ever virgin born. The female is the fertile sex, and whatever is fertile is looked upon as female. At this point, Swiney says, in the second stage of reproduction, the female produces a fertilizer. Instead of endless daughters, she forms an organism that is unlike herself, but made by herself, of herself, to meet a certain end. It has no power, like the daughters, to reproduce itself, but yet the mother of the fertile sex destines it to be a fertilizer. If the female sex is the reproducing, the fertile sex, the male generated in her body, the fertilizer, is also female, but a differentiated, incomplete female organism, undeveloped in the distinctive creative organ and functions of the female. Thus, there is only one sex, the female. Sex differentiation being a transitionary phase of existence to attain certain ends in the variation of type and species. The male, the immature, the degenerate organism, is produced by the female, of the female, from the female, and for the female alone. In the primary state of reproduction, when the organism is perfect, the function of generation is performed by one supreme unit, in which the dual elements of creation appear in a functional degree. In this stage, the offspring is produced by the perfect process of parthenogenesis. As ages come and go, a course of degeneration adversely affected the unit. The perfect organism is weakened. It must have aid, or the race will end. Eternal intelligence is equal to the occasion. It develops helpmeets, as we have said, to assist their kin and kind to perpetuate the race. Okay, so the helpmeets appear as immature organisms, says Swiney, and their function is that of fertilization. So, according to Francis Swiney, the actual helpmeet of humanity is the male, because their job now is to fertilize the ultimate organism. Okay, as she degenerated, she now needs help to facilitate reproduction, which she was able to do on her own at one particular time. So now she has produced, as she realized she's degenerating, she has, her body has created an organism that would help her reproduce again. So basically, that's pretty much how men came into play. Okay. Here appears the second stage of reproduction. The function is now performed by two imperfect unisexual halves. They must cooperate, coordinate, and copulate with each other in order to perform the creative work that was previously performed by a more perfect and powerful unit. The two halves represent the positive and the receptive elements of creation that were present in the original unit. So when they're talking about parthenogenic birth or reproduction, they're talking about the supreme unit or the perfect human being, which would be the female. She basically contains and possesses both qualities within her body to facilitate a child. So it doesn't necessarily mean that she has both a penis and a vagina. It doesn't really mean that she is technically a hermaphrodite, as they say, or intersex. What it means is that she has both functions within her body. So she's able to provide the sperm needed to start the to start the conception process, to start the cell division of the egg. So that's all she would really need, is to start the cell division of the egg for the child to start growing. So she had that capability, whereas now she doesn't really have that capability. And a lot of times what's not written in this book is that again, it has to do with the environment, whether she's able to populate on her own. So when it comes to producing a child parthenogenically, it would have to do with the celestial bodies. It would have to do with the sun and the cycles of the moon. So when it comes to the closeness or the energies of the cosmos, it would produce a spark in her body for her to start the cell division of her egg. Okay? So that's pretty much how parthenogenic reproduction actually happens. It's something that is more cosmic, and it really depends on the environment. So if any woman wanted to develop that power again within herself right now today, she would have to basically change her environment. So right now in the cities, like they said, the worst off or the most diseased people are the ones who are in the inner cities with the most industrial advancement. That means she would have to leave the cities, right? Go into nature where she's more connected to herself, and then she would have to make sure she is eating clean, her body is not polluted by the GMO foods, or any other poisons or whatever that could have caused her body to degenerate more, other than just over time it degenerating on its own. But if she wanted to reach that height of her optimal functionality again, she would have to change her surroundings. So change her environment, make sure she's in nature, and make sure she is closer to the equator, so that she's also at the height of basically at the height of Earth's atmosphere or axis, so that she can be closer to the celestial body. So that means the sun, the moon, and all the other planets and things like that. So when she is close and she's more in tune with the precession of the planet. She's more in tune with the resonance of the Earth's core and things like that. Once she's more in tune with the Earth and the cosmos, then she would start moving with her biological rhythms, would start syncing up with nature. So once her biological rhythm starts syncing up with nature, then she would be able to, after some time, and she has cleared her body out, she's natural, once she has hit her optimum stage of health, she would be able to have children on her own without any assistance. Okay, now this particular ability is not far from now. So once you start realizing that we in general are raising in consciousness as a collective, you'll see that this is not really too far from. Notice how there are a lot of Black people who are now going back to nature. So there's a back to nature movement happening at this particular moment. Most people are realizing that the United States is toxic and we all need to basically leave and live in other countries. That's one thing that's already happening. There's a lot of expats happening. So people are already raising their consciousness anyway and starting to make the proper decisions and moves to create the optimal environment for their health and well-being. So again, so that means once you start seeing this migration happen at a more massive scale, people are starting to leave the capitalism, people are starting to be less materialistic. This is us trying to come out of the Kali Yuga that we spoke about earlier. So again, once you start seeing the change in consciousness on a collective fashion, then you can start seeing how we as humans in general take care of the earth. Once you start taking care of the earth again, then you'll notice people start regaining their original powers and start accessing their more dormant abilities. You know what I'm saying? Activating more neural pathways in their brain where people are now exercising what we would call powers, okay? Or extra sensory powers, right? ESP, things like that. So this is pretty much something that we can look forward to, and this is where we are going. So yes, we may be in our lowest state of consciousness at this moment, but as what we can really analyze and look at is basically how is humanity doing on a conscious level, and then we will be able to determine when parthenogenesis would become the norm again. Okay, so again, for that to become the norm, we would have to go back and be into the golden age for that to be the norm. Okay, but that's a long ways off, as you can tell from the breakdown of how many years is in each epic. It is shown by all the facts bearing upon the subject that in this stage of existence, the fertilizer was originally and still is produced by the female from the female, and that the fertilizer is also female, but a differentiated, incomplete female organism, undeveloped in the distinctive creative organs and functions of the true female. Okay? In very early times, the male much resembled the female in appearance. Many scholars have observed this, and Buzzacott says the ancient Egyptian kings had pronounced feminine features, corroborating the fact that bisexuality existed to a large extent at some remote period of pre-human existence. True, such is an abnormal happening today, but the evidence is irrefutable that at the beginning of human history, it was a normal event, indicating that evolution from the bisexual to the partial and separate state was gradually developed, evolved, and acquired. So when they say in very early times the male much resembled the female in appearance, they're basically referring to androgen insensitivity syndrome, whereas the example of the woman that I showed you, she was woman in appearance, but she was male genetically. So as far as her chromosomal makeup, she was an XY chromosome. She did not have a womb, but she appeared to be a woman. So that would be the first instance of maleness before it degenerated more. You understand what I'm saying? So that was the first instance of okay, we don't have proper conditions, our consciousness is going down, our body is now different. So this is the first difference. The first difference, like they said, was obviously a fluid secretion or whatever, but after that, after it just being a fluid, it would, as far as a physical manifestation, it would be a woman who is absent of a womb, right? So a man is just a wombless woman. So that's basically what they're talking about. And then you can see, you can guess how it graduated from there. So when they mention pharaohs, they're talking about men who had feminine features. So instead of angular faces, they may have had rounder faces or things like that. So you might want to think about that. Science declares that the fertile female is not only the primal and original sex, but continues throughout human existence as the main trunk of the race. This being a fact, the conclusion is that any variation from the main trunk must be considered as conditions of abnormality and malfunction. Out of these conditions came forth the proud creature called man, making him a direct product of degeneration arising from an unfavorable environment and evil habits. Therefore, man is an incomplete, undeveloped, degenerate female. According to law, like begets like, or the law of attraction, the bisexual organism under favorable conditions produces its kind. The first imperfect positive male cell and the first male organism is an entity separated from its bisexual ancestor, was an initial failure on the part of such ancestor to reproduce its own kind. Some scholars hold that this was due to a chemical deficiency in the metabolism or the physique of the ancestor. So in The Evolution of Sex by Gies and Thompson, and in The Determination of Sex by Professor Lenzhosik of Budapest, this fact is insisted upon with constant reiteration and demonstration. Biology has shown that the female is superior to the male. It has shown that the somatic cells of the female contain more chromosomes than those of the male. The nuclear lines of protoplasm that carry the hereditary and the individualistic qualities of the unit are more numerous in the complex organism of the female than in the more undeveloped organism of the male. In some species, the male cell has 10 chromosomes while the female has 12. In another, the female cell has 38 while the male only has 35. Due to this anatomical fact, Professors Hurst and Castle of the Mendel School of Biologists observe femaleness is due to the presence of a chromosome absent in the male. We may therefore regard the female as of more complex organization than the male, and in that sense, the female may be said to be physiologically the superior sex. We may thus further conceive that either the female is an extra developed male and has arisen from the addition of a new factor to maleness, or perhaps, more probably, that the male has arisen as a defective variation from the female. Commenting on this phase of the matter, Swiney remarks, the male cell therefore is a variant daughter cell not developed to the full potentiality of the female. Physiologists are at last grasping the anatomical truth that man is only a degenerate woman, Professor Albrecht, writing on the obscure diseases of men, clearly averse that males are rudimentary females. T.H. Montgomery concludes, from a general view of the leading facts of development, physiology, and anatomy, that the male is less developed and more embryonic than the female. He draws attention to the fact that when one sex is rudimentary in comparison with the other, it is almost always the male. So they kind of go on, he kind of goes on and continues to quote different scientists and biologists and physiologists, and he quotes from their work, them all pretty much corroborating the same thing in their findings, right? So again, it can sort of sound repetitive and just said in different ways, but he's utilizing this particular book to show you how this isn't something he just came up with, but it's something that has been found and proven multiple times over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Okay, so if you don't believe one, you don't believe the second, you don't believe the third, it's a consensus, right? So that is one. And rather than continue to do that, I might just let you know that when they're talking about rudimentary or degenerate males, one thing that you notice is that the female has, I believe it is 1,038 genes on the X chromosome, while the Y chromosome contains about 38 genes. I will double check those numbers, but that's what I remember. And over time, it is actually decreasing, because at first it was 78 and now it's 38. So over time, the amount of genes that's on the Y chromosome is decreasing. So that would imply that soon enough there won't be a Y chromosome, which would also imply that if there's no Y chromosome, then that would mean that there would be no male expression. So the male gender expression, there would only really be, as far as sex is concerned, it would be just a female sex, and all the females would again contain both masculine and feminine qualities, which everyone does have masculine and feminine qualities. Everyone can express themselves in any energetic fashion that they choose, of course, but as far as sex is concerned, through the biological or anatomical factor, it would really just be the genetic makeup would be on the X chromosomes. So we would have a society of XX chromosomes, and the Y chromosome will not exist. Okay? So that's what's coming up.